friends, we're so excited about this because as you see, we have like content creators as well as marketing for current Broadway shows, and we're really interested in the conversation between those two things because there's frankly not enough of that conversation that is currently happening. We believe, or I'll speak for myself, but I feel like I'm backed up by these humans here. There's like a huge opportunity for Broadway brands to be reaching out even more than they currently are to audiences who desperately want more and more content. And we're interested in finding out how to best do that. So that's what a lot of this panel is about. Okay, so we want to learn a tiny bit about you all first. So we're just going to do some like hand raising to get an idea of what's happening here. Sorry to put you on the spot at 10:05 in the morning. Okay, so first of all, who here? Raise your hand if you're from New York. Raise your hand if you're not from New York. Is anyone not from the US? Whoa! Work! That's awesome.
Welcome.
Okay, we're raising hands for if you have an account on each of the following platforms. Ready? Instagram.
Nice.
TikTok. Who doesn't have a TikTok? No shame. Who actively uses Facebook? Yep. Threads. We love Threads. And YouTube. Does anyone have a YouTube account? If you don't have a YouTube account, do you watch YouTube? A lot of people are like, go. When was the last, oh, this is tricky. Okay, we're gonna give you options, week, month, and never. When was the last time that you saw a Broadway show's own content come up on your For You page, whether that's like an Instagram Discover page or TikTok? Okay, within the last day. Work. Within the last week. Month. Raise your hand if you've never seen a Broadway show's original content come up on your feed. Okay, dig it.
Can we actually?
Yeah.
And I'd love to know, I mean, is this coming up for everyone who's seen it within the last month per se? Can you raise your hand? And was that organic or sponsored, or like a sponsored post?
Raise your hand if you think it was organic. And raise your hand if you saw the little ad that was like, this is sponsored, or this is an ad.
Cool, great.
Interesting. That's super interesting. Good question. Raise your hand if you have ever been influenced by social media, whether that's like an individual creator or a show's page, to purchase a show ticket. Work. Okay, great. Out of curiosity, raise your hand if that was from an individual creator's account. Raise your hand if that was from a show's actual page. Interesting. Okay, cool. This is a great little focus group. People should hire us. Okay, fierce. Raise your hand if you have ever made content about a Broadway show. Cool. Are y'all having trouble hearing me? No, we're good? Okay, great. Okay, friends. Now we have a little, you did it. Good job. Yeah. We're gonna turn it back on us now. Okay, so, panelists, we're going to go down the line. What percentage of your content is theater content? Wildlin, we'll start with you.
Oh, loaded. Yeah, I'd say solid 10. Yeah.
Yeah.
Solid 10.
Yeah.
If we had to go either way, I'd say recently more, but yeah, it was like a less than 10.
Dig it.
Yeah.
I would say 90% of my content, or 90. Yeah, I'd say 90% of my content.
When you say theater content, do you mean about Broadway shows or beyond, or about like acting? Because I kind of put them in two different categories. But if we put them in the same umbrella, then 100% like it's all theater.
I'm gonna say any theater.
I said I would compartmentalize that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I
Then
think maybe about a show in particular.
Well, because it's worth noting, performer,
Yes.
performer,
Yes.
performer, and then Ava and I, not performers, retired. But I do theater. I direct and choreograph and write. But yeah, that's super interesting. So you were going to say you compartmentalize.
I did compartmentalize, yeah.
Okay, so then how much is about Broadway shows?
63%.
And the remainder, for math reasons, that's what?
Ooh. I do theater.
37, is that right? 37% is theater in general.
Yes, I would say.
Okay.
And then maybe there's 5% that's about like fashion, because I like to do stuff about outfits and things like that, and just other random things that I want to talk about.
Love it. All right, JJ.
Yeah, I feel like when you're in a show or like that's your world, like right now it's probably like 90-95% is theater content. But yeah, similarly, like if you're traveling, like in other times, sometimes travel, sometimes other lifestyle stuff, but
For sure.
I think 90% probably. Yeah.
At work, 100%. My personal is probably 60% dogs, 40% theater.
Love.
Yes.
That's correct. Okay, great. And then we can just raise our hands. Panelists, raise your hand if you consider content creation one of your jobs. Great. Love it. Fantastic. Wildlin, you've got our first big question.
So, how would you describe the current relationship between content creators and Broadway brands, right? So for me, that is my relationship, which is that I am born and bred of the theater. This is something that I love deeply. I've always loved it, and so naturally, it's a sizable portion of my life, and I include my audience in participating in that, right? However, the difficulty is that in terms of doing it sustainably, I have not been able to foster the kind of relationship with the brand of Broadway that would allow me to make it the center of my content professionally. Yeah.
I think that the relationship between content creators and Broadway brands specifically is that it's still very new. I think it's in its infancy. I think Broadway shows are trying to figure out how to best partner with content creators and to trust that if they do engage in these partnerships that they will be successful and have a successful return. And so I think for myself personally, I've been able to create a lot of different relationships with a lot of different shows in different ways. So there's the partnership of like, hey, can you promote, our show and talk about your experience going to see the show? But then there's also the partnership of can you document the behind the scenes of our show and show people what is actually happening behind the curtain. And so that has kind of been like my personal experience with it, but I just think the relationship is new, and I think theater is trying to learn how to really enter this digital landscape, if you will.
Yes, like similar to what you're saying, like I've done a little bit of everything now at this point, and like being in shows and promoting it on my own because I just am in the show and that's my life, and then also working with shows that are specifically like, hey, do content for us, like Disney with Hercules, like I was, paid to help make backstage content and things like that with their approval. And then there's other ones, like you said, like you go to a show and promote it, and they're like, hey, can you show your experience going to Lion King or Moulin Rouge or whatever the show may be. So I think it is all very new, it's exciting, and I think I think the exciting part of it, of where it can go or can be created to with content creators and with, actors as well, is just like kind of pulling back the curtain, because Broadway can feel very, or at least when I was younger, it feels very elitist, it feels very like far away and very like untouchable, and so to like make it accessible, make it seem like it's just another job or just another day, and like showing people like demystifying kind of what it is, I think is a really big and powerful thing, and it makes people feel like they're part of it. They're like, oh, I'm rooting for that show or that actor or that person, and I want to go see it because I feel like I know them, or I feel like I can root for this project because I've seen how it's been created. So I think there's so much power in that, and I'm starting to see it with like Ava and I have even worked on several shows now together, and so yeah, I'm seeing several things like that.
Yeah, I think that what's really interesting is there are a lot of sort of different buckets of these kind of content creators. There are people like JJ who are in a show, talking about the show, sometimes paid by the show to do content. And then there are actors who are auditioning, doing all of those things. And then there are also just like people who are going to see theater and posting what they're seeing, what they're liking. And I think that it's interesting to look at those as different ways that we as Broadway shows can sort of tap into these different creative outlets that people have. Like whether it's backstage at a show or inviting someone to see a show and talk about it, like there are a lot of different ways that we're exploring to work with them.
Yeah, it feels like it's very much, sort of as everyone has said, it feels very much like it's in its infancy, and what we are all sort of like circling around is whether or not it can be any sort of a sustainable career to make content for theater specifically. And I'm seeing humans in the audience doing this, so like I know that you guys get it. And, going to see a show because someone has invited you is a fantastic opportunity, but it also is not a sustainable career. Obviously, you can't just go see Broadway shows because somebody has gifted you tickets. That's amazing. It's amazing. So there's a combo right now, and I feel like Broadway has not. Broadway sometimes takes the theater industry at large. Sometimes takes its time learning the value of new media, advertising, entertainment, etc. And so I think it's really interesting because I know that a number of these content creators on this panel, we have done paid partnerships with not Broadway brands or lifestyle brands that it's like, get ready with me, and it's like, we're gonna talk about the clothes that we're wearing, or we're talking about the makeup that we're putting on. As of right now, that's not happening as much with specific Broadway brands. It is happening, slowly but surely, and I think both JJ and I have worked with Ava at Marathon, so I worked on Shucked, and I did a lot of content that was both for the Shucked page as well as on my own content, and literally every single night of previews, someone came up to me and was like, oh my gosh, hi, I'm at the show because of your content, which was insane, literally every single night of previews. So it definitely converts, but I feel like, at least in terms of maybe, producers or general management or powers that be, because it is new, I think there's still a hesitancy. It's like, no, we need that New York Times spread, or oh no, we need that Subway spread. We need the brand awareness that way. They don't understand as much that we have a direct line to them to show backstage Broadway and let them see the entire process of a Broadway show, which is access that no one has had since How to Discover the Next Elle Woods on MTV. You know what I'm saying? It's really, really exciting, and it's an opportunity that hasn't presented itself before, and so I preach about it sometimes, like I'm sort of doing right now, because I just think there are empty seats at almost every single Broadway show right now, and people want to see the shows, and obviously we will talk about it. There are so many other barriers to entry, but one of them is getting people to know what your show is, especially if it's original content. We're having a strobe dance party.
It agrees.
It's
Yeah.
So anyway, I think you all get what I'm trying to say here. I just think that there's a huge opportunity that we haven't totally tapped into, and I know that people in the industry, whether it is people who are specifically working in marketing, they want it. It's just not a universal enough thing that we have support. And I do think, as we were doing the raise your hands, so many of you have brought Broadway tickets because of content that you've seen online. So anyway, okay, I'm done.
I also want to speak to we've seen the power of virality in theatrical spaces, right? How the internet can get a hold of something, invite its teeth into something. The way that obviously Be More Chill is the example that comes to mind of just the internet sunk its teeth into something and injected it with electricity. But also I think we see all the time with fan art and fan fiction. I don't know.
Yeah, sure.
The ways that the community is really longing to participate in something, so much so that they will do the groundwork and the labor to create something from these properties that already exist, right? But that labor doesn't go anywhere. It all goes back to the intellectual property. So yeah, I think the optimistic place that I think we can all look forward to is when we can portion a part of our industry when we talk about what careers exist, right? I'm all the time I talk to young people, I'm you don't have to be an actor. There's something called a company manager. They're there every night. They're I had no idea these avenues existed, but this is also, hopefully soon, right? An incredibly viable option. It's a huge part of the marketing wing of Broadway.
It's a huge part of marketing in general now.
Yeah.
I think that part of the problem is a lot of the advertising strategies for Broadway were established 20 years ago. And there was no social media, there was no TikTok. Even really pre-pandemic, there was no TikTok.
Right.
So marketing post-pandemic is different when we have these people who have large followings without being related to the Broadway show. So I think that some producers are starting to be more excited about social. On Shucked, our lead producer was yes, hire Katharine. She's making content anyway. We should be paying her to make content about the show. So I think that we're getting there, but convincing people that social is a viable marketing tool is not always easy.
Which is kind of wild. I mean, yes, and I know you know, but JJ, you have 1 million followers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who are people who actively are seeking. That's a literal algorithm that is a funnel to Broadway lovers. You know what I'm saying? So like, why would a mailer? That's junk.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna look at that.
Right.
But like, they have a direct path to the most this intimate, lovely relationship where you see JJ's face and he's telling you about the Broadway show. There's a million people who want to see that Broadway show. So it's just like wild to me that we haven't capitalized on that yet. But I feel like it's gonna happen. It's just gonna take some time.
And really
Yeah.
even more than that million.
Yes.
Because not everyone who sees
Correct.
JJ's
Is a
content is
follower.
following him.
Yeah,
Exactly.
right,
So there's
right.
like, especially with TikTok, there's the potential
Right.
to reach so many more people
Yeah.
that
Right.
don't follow you.
Right. It's wild. Great.
Mailers are crazy.
Right, like
Yeah.
why? And I know it's like, which gets to like another question, which we're now going out of order
Yes.
and we're sort of just riffing.
Mhm.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Co-moderator. Yeah, but it gets to a thing where it's like we're specifically advertised. So it's like there's like a long-held, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but a long-held understanding that like the Broadway buyer is typically female and is typically of a certain age, and that certain age is not our age. It is like an older audience, and I think that's amazing. But also, young people really want to see Broadway shows, and we need to cater to them on the platforms that they're already actively engaging on. We also need to make ticket prices more accessible, and a broader range of ticket prices. Why do we have empty seats in our theaters when we could have more rush, when we could have more lottery, when we could have lower price points? Why aren't we doing that? Why isn't dynamic pricing getting those butts in seats so that we have excited audiences in the theaters? Anyway, yeah, I just think there is a younger Broadway audience, and we aren't serving them on the platforms or with accessible ways to actually see Broadway, and I want that to change. That wasn't a question, sorry.
Yeah, I was like, are we out of order?
I just got excited. Okay, great. I feel like we did number 6. Kind of. Like, the question was, spoiler, how is creating content with theater brands unique compared to other niches? And the too long didn't read as effectively, Broadway isn't paying yet for content creation in the way that other industries are.
Oh.
Yeah.
So yeah, the question is, it seems like creators and advertising and press and digital marketing are all compartmentalized, I love that word today, are siloed in and of themselves, right, individually. So can you talk to us a little bit about like the order of operations, the food chain for all of these individual parties, and how can we bring them into better conversation with each other? Does
That makes sense. So I think the thing that is wild when you start working in theater is that you notice there are so many different people working on a show in so many different capacities, and they're mostly not speaking to each other. You know, there were a lot of times where I would barely interact with actors on a show, and now we're like pretty actively working together. And even just in the marketing world, there are usually like 3-4 different teams working on a show with tons of different people doing different things. So just like naturally, it's hard to get a ton of people onto the same page. So there's always paid advertising, there's partnerships, there's marketing, there's social media, there's the people who are putting the giant 2-page New York Times ads in. And I think that what I have been trying really hard to do recently is to get more involved with people who are actually working on the show, to like talk to them and know what's happening and try to keep everyone sort of on the same page.
I mean, is there, for me, I'd love to know like what the umbrella system is, kind of, right? Like kind of what the nesting doll system is. That this is, there's a marketing department, and that social media is just a wing inside of
And
that.
press,
Well,
right?
so on a Broadway show, the producers are in charge. They're with the money. They're hiring all of the different agencies and stuff. And then depending on the show, there's a few different ways to do it. Some shows will hire one advertising marketing agency who has their own different teams to do each of the other little things, and then also a press team who's in charge of making the press releases, booking the TV appearances, and all of those things. But then some other shows will split it up. So the company that I work for, we only do organic social media. So we're not placing any Facebook ads. We're not doing partnerships. I don't know how to get an ad in the New York Times. So it depends on the show for the hierarchy. but most shows have a weekly marketing meeting where all of those people are getting on the same page, they're updating the producer.
And that's led by whom?
That is led mostly by the producer. Some shows have started hiring marketing directors who are like working with the producer as the lead of all of these different marketing branches. But honestly, a lot of the time it's just different people doing different things and then touching base once a week.
That's why.
Yeah, did you have
I think I sort of asked it,
Oh, brilliant.
but thank you.
So I've recently seen like an actor from a show who is an ensemble member or a principal, whoever, who is in a musical taking the song and performing it online, right? And it's being posted as part of the show's platform or something like that, right? So what are the logistics that go into, because I mean, to me I was like, oh, this is really sick. This is just like a cast member who I'm getting to see spotlighted, right? And share a piece of art, a piece of music from the show, and like it's really engaging to me. And I think that for the community, it's also like a really engaging, kind of at this point unconventional piece of content that you see. So for something like that, where you're taking someone who's a part of the company already, I mean, is it a convoluted kind of arrangement to kind of get something like that to go live?
It's a little convoluted and it depends on the show. It also depends on how excited the people in the show are about making the content. Because a lot of times, management, stage management, actors don't want someone in the room filming during a rehearsal. You know, so there are a lot of times that I physically cannot be in the room, and then having someone like JJ or Katharine filming the interesting things that are happening on a day-to-day basis that I can't do from my computer at my office.
And you may or may not even know is happening, right? Like on that
Often.
day, or what the vibe is in the room. Like that's something that I think has been really valuable that we've been able to do is like, on Shucked, like if it was like, okay, this is a high stress day, we got 60 new pages, the actors are not in a space to create content, great, we're gonna film something tomorrow and I'll rain check this.
And
Like
the last thing they want is an email from me saying, hey, you wanna do this TikTok? Like, literally, that is what happens if I have no sort of like inside look into the room. I could be emailing you on the worst day possible to like do some stupid TikTok trend.
totally.
So one of the things that I've been doing recently with, just submitting myself for auditions has been submitting my headshot, resume, and influencer media kit, because I want regional theaters or any theater job I'm submitting to know that like, yes, I am down to be a part of this production and I'm gonna play this role, but if you want content, I do this professionally. And so we can have a conversation about what that looks like, and if you want, because what sometimes happens is, people see my content and they're like, oh, it's so great, could you do this for us? Yes, I can, for a fee.
Yeah.
And so, because it just becomes another job. I have a full-time job, I work a 9 to 5, I do content creation, I freelance. And so, literally, if I'm doing a show, I'm doing all of those things plus the show, and then now creating content for the show. I have 5 jobs, that is not humane. And so, I'm like, it's gotta have some kind of payoff, for me, and the payoff ultimately is money. So, I think that one thing too that content creators get into, and myself included, like there's so many things that I do sometimes for free because I love theater. And to be honest, a lot of my free content does drive my paid content.
Right.
Because people will see the free content and be like, oh my gosh, that was so good. Could you come do this for us? And I'm like, haha, yes. But I think that ultimately, and this is why I said earlier that I think this is in its intimacy, because I don't know, and you could probably say better, Ava, I don't know what marketing budgets look like for specifically partnerships with influencers, and every influencer's rate is so different based on what they are being asked to do, the size of their following. And so I think that that is kind of like the next thing, like will there be, I hope not, but will there be standardized rates that every influencer is paid for a certain kind of thing for a certain period of time, or is it always going to be just what the influencer's rate is? We don't know.
Hopefully there will at least be a range, but again, because it's in its infancy, like you said, I feel like, what is the influencer budget? Right now, I feel like it's not a thing.
It's probably, it's a 0 on the line.
Yeah. Right. Like, it's like, okay, can we afford an extra however much a week to do this?
Right, and often it's, we can give you 10 free tickets for this week, invite some influencers, which like, as you said, sure, it's, we all love to see theater,
But it's
yeah.
asking for work, and it's technically, it's a gift.
Yeah.
It's not paid for your work, you know?
But I think shows are starting. Like, I
Yeah.
think that this
Yeah.
is it's gonna start happening.
Yeah, I agree. Should we maybe share like what it's like to document?
Sure.
Like a show, like when you go to one. So if you get a comp ticket to go to a show and someone is expecting like a video vlog from you, typically my vlog will start at home. I'm like, I'm gonna give you the outfit. What am I wearing to the show? Okay, because that is important. We want to give that you understand branding and that you can match the marquee and do all the things. Okay. So that's number one. So I had to think about an outfit, and I know this sounds crazy, but literally this is the kind of thought that goes into these kinds of videos. Like, this outfit, are you joking? Because, like, are you joking? Thank you so much. I'm about to be a fashion influencer if I was your guys. Anyway, it starts with the outfit. It then starts with hair and makeup. I'm not even trying to hold you, but literally on TikTok, if I don't wear makeup, those videos don't do as well. And that's a problem probably with the world that we can't get into today, but hair and makeup is a thing. So that's all time, right? This is about an hour and a half, 2 hours of preparation just before I even leave the house. I leave the house, I'm documenting, like getting on the train, showing the tickets, all these kinds of things. Get to the show. I used to go to shows and not film anything before. And I used to just be able to take in the experience and not worry about digitally documenting it, because you are looking to get a specific shot that makes it look like you're having a really good experience. No one wants a shot that's like, oh my God, I can't even see what's going on. So you're trying to literally like storyboard. A lot of times I'm doing this in my head. I'm like, okay, what story is this telling? Is this gonna make people interested to go see this? And do they get the feel that I'm feeling when I walk in? But I am numbing my own feeling because I'm so busy getting the shot. Yeah. So in the lobby, pull the play. Y'all know the Playbill videos. It's like, oh, Playbill, you know, getting the curtain call. You have no idea how stressed I am watching a show with my phone on airplane mode, because if I turn it off, I won't be able to turn it back on in time for the curtain call. You have no idea. I'm literally like, please do not ring. Please do not ring. I'm like, don't be that person. And so, okay, cool. Then we do the curtain call. And then I'm also nervous filming the curtain call because I also think we just need to have a tiny conversation with ushers to say, look, I know I'm not supposed to film a Broadway show, but this brand has hired me to film this curtain call. Please do not yell.
Do not yell at me.
Do not yell at me. So I'm stressed trying to get this curtain call because I'm worried that someone is going to like yell at me for filming. Yeah. And then I have to put all of this together after the show is over and make it into a video and tell a story about my experience. And that's a lot of work.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Especially that doesn't even take into account whether or not you liked the show. So then there's that whole conversation about how we ethically do that, and like, do you want your followers? Like, I want my community to trust me, and so it's like, join me for a night at the theater, and then I set myself up so that it's like, okay, you're just coming to the theater with me. I don't have to say anything about the show, but we're like gonna have a night at the theater together. It's so much fun. This is running indefinitely, or this is running through until this time. If I love the show, then afterwards I can be like, oh my gosh, this person was amazing and this person was amazing. But that's like a whole other question of like, are you, like, if you are at, like, we've had this conversation before, if you are paying me, then I'm an advertisement, and I'm only gonna offer good information. If you are not paying me, there's not really...
If I pay?
Like, yeah, like there's not... Go ahead.
But also, this is therapy now. I literally I'm a little bit nervous to share my opinion about shows, like my real opinion, because I'm nervous I won't work in theater ever again.
Yeah.
I'm like, I won't book a job as an actor if I say how I really feel about certain shows. And it's not that I'm trying to, you know, trash a show or anything like that, but if I share like an opinion that is not a popular one, it is a worry that the producers, director, creative team, they will see that and be like, oh, we'll never hire Kaisha. And so we don't want that either. So I told the line a lot with, okay, what in this experience did I genuinely enjoy, and what part of this experience do I think someone else would enjoy, even if I didn't fully enjoy the content of a show.
Yeah.
And I think it, I just want to like amplify all of that. You spend the entire evening as a director of your own life and the images that your life can create, right? And it's a psychological load, and I think that people underestimate that, like, content creating. Oh, you take a couple of videos. No, it's a very particular type of curation of everything and the angles that you exist in, you know. And it's hard. And please don't yell at me for recording. I do it because I love you. Like,
and we've been asked to all the
yeah,
times.
yeah.
Yeah.
But I think the kind of the, I don't want to call it like a hostage negotiation or whatever.
The
But,
golden
you know, when you hit when you hit that 20-minute mark of watching a show and you're like, oh my gosh.
I like to ask questions.
I do not. Yeah.
Like if I don't enjoy a show, or sometimes even if I do, it'll be like if something isn't quite working, I'll ask a question because I'm also genuinely curious about like, you know, whoever I like having conversations constantly and talking, obviously, that's why we're here. And so like, I like to ask questions about like, why is this happening, or what would have been more successful, or what does this mean, or what does this imply? So I think that's like also a little roundabout way to even.
Yeah, I think it goes back to the demystifying process that JJ was talking about, right? That actually, even if it is not something that is, if it's not a glowing review, the honesty of what it's like to go to the theater and what it was like to experience something, for better or for worse, that having that be a part of participating in demystifying it that way is still a net good for the industry as a whole, right? I think that people can kind of feel how that kind of tone policing plays into the elitism and plays into the exclusivity, right? Which is that I cannot speak if I do not have nice things to say, and that as a whole is a damper on how we share space, on how we come together, on how we communicate. That's not fun. Sometimes I want to, you know,
Have a controversial opinion.
sometimes it's a hot take and it's a little shady. But I've gone to see things because I saw a hot take and it was shady.
Right. Same.
And I wanted my own hot take and I still went and saw, you know, it all goes to the same end.
And ultimately, we want Broadway to succeed. So none of us are just going to go outright trash a show. A, because we want to work again, but B, because like we want the industry to thrive.
Yeah.
And we know how challenging it is to put up a show, to stand on stage every night and do the thing. Like, we've experienced it. So coming from my perspective, I'm always going to be cheering for those actors and everyone a part of a show. It's just that, you know, sometimes things are, you know, not my taste, and why can't I say that?
Yeah. Okay, friends, we promised you a Q&A. If you have questions, you were on it, go for it.
I did. That was a beautiful segue.
Thank you.
Really good.
Thanks.
Yeah, we love it. Let's just like work our way back, and you can just stand and we can repeat questions. Go for it.
A beginner question and a deeper question. Could you define what a Broadway brand is? Is that like the Schubert organization and theater owners and producers and those individual firms? Is that what a Broadway brand is? And a much deeper question, as influencers go into a Broadway show, you're basically critics. And does that make you a separate category? And isn't this all ultimately a problem of coordination between creative and marketing and between press and theater criticism conceptually? Isn't it all one thing, which is created through the internet because everyone has a camera, and what does that mean? Sorry,
Pull up a chair.
I'm like looking at Ava.
Look at me. Okay. To your first question of the brand of Broadway, I think that's a great question because like Broadway itself is a brand, and we're all, at the end of the day, we all want Broadway to succeed a lot more than like specific shows, which to your points is like why we don't go on social media and fully trash a show. We want all these humans to succeed. So I think that there are a lot of different things that all encompass the brand of Broadway. I think that here we are sort of considering it as shows, as content creators who are making content about theater, as influencers who are famous for doing whatever they're doing. Yeah.
I think it's interesting because I think globally Broadway can also just mean musical theater to people at large. Like people, you know, conflate those two things together. Whether Broadway is the 41 physical theaters that we have here in New York, or if it's like musical theater at large, because ultimately like Shucked is on Broadway now, but then it's going to tour and it's, you know, going to be in London and then it's going to be licensed, and so it's like that brand will continue into the communities across America, across the globe. And so I think the brand of Broadway is ultimately much larger than just the New York epicenter, which is like a whole other conversation about wanting to democratize theater and the brand of Broadway. But for me, the brand of Broadway is a very broad thing. It's Broadway.
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah. I don't remember the second question.
Combining influencer and critic.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's like the kind of like amorphous liminal in between space that we're in right now, which is that critics are paid by a third party specifically to say what it is they need to say and be honest about it. And there's a complication because sometimes the people who are paying us are the people who want us to discuss them. So yeah, I think, what was the word? Infancy.
Yes.
Yeah, part of the infancy is figuring out, and also coming to the table and having a real honest discussion about like what happens when you pay me, and I have to kind of be avoidant about, because I don't want to lie to my audience. It's actually going to undermine my business if I say something dishonestly and recommend something dishonestly. In the long term, that'll hurt my business entity, even if it benefits yours. So yeah, we're gonna. I think it's like that is a. You asked the right question.
JJ, did you want to say something? I felt like.
No. That was it. That was it. I mean, just the fact that the shows are paying you, so it's like you can't. You know, I feel like you can just spin it in a positive way, but I don't know. Usually, I have a good time at shows. But like for example, like I'm not gonna like, you know, I saw Lion King, was paid by Disney to see it. Had the best time. There was a child behind me kicking and screaming the entire time. That ruined my experience, but I was not going to talk about that, you know what I mean? Like, no, I love Lion King, thank you so much, you know? So that's okay because that is true, and you just omit maybe some of the details, but yeah.
Yes.
Yes, thank you for this. I'm of the older generation, and it was so interesting when you polled all of us, TikTok, Facebook, Threads, everything. My 20-year-old niece laughs at me that I'm still on Facebook. So do you see any of these social media outlets phasing out that Broadway and the theater community won't really be using it anymore? Is there one over the other, or are we still in? I'm really true. But if you know, if there's something that's going to be preferred over the other, like Threads, you know, that's Twitter. Like, what's the word on the street for the social media outlets that are really
Twitter,
big?
I would say, is definitely on its way out. We have a number of shows who have opted to just not do Twitter accounts recently. And I think Facebook, we really consider as like an older demographic, but it is valuable, especially for that, because the traditional ticket buying audience that Katharine was talking about before, they're on Facebook.
Yeah.
That's where I found out.
But a lot of the newer audience that a lot of us are like passionate about getting to the shows, they're on TikTok, they're on Instagram. So I think part of what we think about when we think about the social media strategy for a show is who is the ideal audience and how can we tailor the content to the platform. You know, we won't always post the same thing we post on TikTok, on Facebook, because we know that it's a younger demographic, it's different budgets.
Dig in.
Thank
More
you.
questions? I want to make sure that we like get a lot of these questions in, so I'll start throwing these. Go for it. Yeah.
So there's obviously a lot of conversation about fair pay for actors and storytellers right now, and because of an impending strike and the strike is already happening, I feel like content creation is a natural pathway to income for folks who aren't working right now, and there's a lot of, I mean, as an influencer, I find a lot of brands exploit and expect a lot more for a lot less. Are you finding, as for those of you who are getting paid to promote shows, is that exploitation bleeding into your content creation, or is there space for fair pay for creators? And what do you see that looking like when you are paid if it's not gifted?
Oh, wow.
I think it definitely, it's tricky because like we were saying, there's so many different areas of content, but I'm going to try and be most concise. But like what I've seen the most like quote unquote like fair pay are like things that I think are worth, and what other brands, if I'm partnering with like Netflix or Amazon or whatever, I feel like shows that are paying influencers to come, I have seen a lot more money from like making content to see shows and promote them that way. And usually they're long running shows, which means they have more budget for that, and shows trust their marketing departments by then. But like in terms of like being in shows, like I've now had experiences where I've been in some shows and they have like completely seen my worth as a content creator, and even if it's not a ton of money, it's still like, you see me and you're paying me for my time on top of what I'm already doing. And then there's been other shows that just like expect you know, the actors to make content, and like just because, and that has to do with producer money, like it has to do with what producers do. Marketing departments can fight for their actors to be paid for that, and like they can only do so much, you know. So it really is like, it's yes and no, and I hope that we just go towards more fair pay. But it's also like, then if a whole cast and there's 1 or 2 people being paid for the content, and granted it's different if they're being paid to make content for the brand's pages, but then like, is everyone else gonna be like, well, what the hell, you know what I mean? Because they're like, we all are in this too and still making content for the show but not being paid, so it's a little tricky, you know? But yeah.
That's so interesting.
That is tricky. Yeah.
I wanted to like, I'm wanting to get through questions, but I'm also like, oh my gosh, it hadn't occurred to me, like, individuals in a cast getting paid, but not the entire company getting paid, and how that gets really tricky. And it's like, well, is it fair if gosh, that's so crazy, because then it's like, you know, if digital marketing is going to those people and saying, we will pay you for this, and other people, I feel like the argument could be made that the other actors in the show are also making it for their own platform, and it's also then it's a question of, are the creators creating white label? So like I did like white labeled content, i.e. I just like made content for at Shucked Musical or Shucked Broadway that didn't have my name on it, that a lot of the time my face wasn't in it, and I just like produced that content and offered it to Shucked as a brand, but then I also on my own page had Shucked Musical content. That's what it felt like, and both performed well. And so like, I don't know what, this is so nuanced. That's a really good question.
Yeah.
Truly.
Go for it.
Have you guys ever been paid to make content for a West End musical or like been influenced to make content?
Kaisha.
Yes. So I recently went to the West End in May, and I got to work with the Gods and Dolls team. Gods and Dolls. Let me explain something to you. If you are going to London anytime soon, that is a must-see. And I'm like being so serious, like you have to go see that show. I'm not even a golden age girly, okay? But that show had me together. So I did create content for them. And it was a really cool experience because I got to not only document my experience seeing the show, but I also got to interview Marisha Wallace, who is playing Adelaide right now in that production. And so it kind of happened slightly, no, it wasn't organic, but kind of. So I pitched myself to Today Ticks. I said, hey, I'm gonna be in London. Do y'all have anything going on? And they were like, actually, Gods and Dolls is looking for someone. And so we got, you know, partnered together to do something. And I also worked with Wicked to talk about, you know, the principals in Wicked right now, Alphaba, whatever her names, Glenda and Fierro. Oh my gosh! They are all Black. And so I wanted to talk about, you know, how that changes the story a little bit. And you know, Wicked is about race anyway. So it was really cool to be able to like talk about that show as well. So yes.
I'm going in September, so if anyone has any connections, just let me
Right.
know. Yes, go for it.
Hi, so I'm Cameron, I'm an actor, and I'm also a marketing manager at a theater. So my question is more so about like niches. Do you think it's beneficial to have a niche? Currently my social media, I would say, is like 60-40 between theater and social justice. I've gone viral for social justice stuff, but I really want to do theater and content creation and ultimately get to that influencer level. So what do you think is the best way to like secure an audience? And kind of adding on to that, I have, I'd say strong engagement, but not strong following or like strong likes. How do I really secure that audience to get them to follow me as well?
Yeah. So I said earlier that maybe 10% of my platform is theater content. 10% of any singular thing also is quite a bit. I don't have a niche. The niche is that I come on and the experience, like my life and my person and who I am is kind of the, I hope, the brand and the thing that gets people to engage and come back. And I think the internet is really, especially like young people right now are really turning over in a way that they are really aspiring to humanize. Two extremes are happening, right? There is like one end, which is AI, avatars. I don't want to put my own identity and my own face on the internet. That's like really cringe. You know what I mean? I have an avatar that does all my things and I write video essays, but this animation is speaking for me and on my behalf, or the camera's turned up or something. And then there's the other half or another group that I think is really striving to humanize the internet experience. And I think part of the humanization of that is to untether ourselves from this idea of niche identity. So if I were talking to you, I would say that I think the returns aren't as explosive, right? It's more difficult. If your audience does not know what you're going to be talking about every time they see you, I think they're a bit more tentative to be like, it's a surprise every time I open the box, versus I know every time I follow this person, they're gonna be talking about theater or they're gonna be talking about social justice, and I want that, and I'm here and I'm tuned in. I think the tentativeness is worth it because you will get to be three-dimensional online, right? Even if it takes longer to expand your following, you will get to be a total, fully rounded person, even in the digital spaces that you enter. And that is something that I don't take for granted. I think it's worthwhile that when I meet people in the streets and they say, hello, oh my gosh, I love your, and they're like, you're the same, you're just like you. And I'm like, yeah. Thank you, I appreciate that. Yeah.
Also, I just want to add quickly, I think it depends on what your goals are for your social media platforms, because if you are doing this, for fun, and it's just like a hobby and a thing that like you're doing because you want to, versus you want to turn this into a career, something that you're paid for, something that like you want to see become, let's say, full-time income, I think being really clear about what your goals are can help you also make a decision. Because I've seen people do it so many different ways, where they're like super niche and then they expand out, or they expand out and then they niche down, or they do a combination of the both. I saw something on Instagram that was like, I don't need a niche, I am the niche, and that is what I aspire to. Whatever I talk about on the internet, I want people to just listen to me, just because. I'm like, I want to be my own niche, and I think that I have, for example, niched quite a bit to theater because that's a big part of my life, but I need hobbies and I want to start talking about, my love for crocheting. I don't crochet, but like if I start, I want people to care, so.
We're going to do 2 more super quick questions, and we have a final quick panel question. Go for it.
Hi. So I'm very interested in your thoughts as to what Lin-Manuel Miranda did with Hamilton, with Ham for Ham. I used to perform musical theater. My daughter's here with me, one of my best friends. We met working in the theater, so this day is really special for me. But for someone with kids that hadn't seen Hamilton, then saw Ham for Ham, or saw it on Disney Plus, so we're talking about accessibility, right? During the pandemic, and then I was finally able to take them to the Broadway show, and they met some of the actors after. What he did with the mix of performers also from other shows, and how he, as the performers from Some Like It Hot, Shucked, and Parade, singing songs outside the theater, and he's able to promote multiple brands and multiple stories and visions at the same time. And of course, I know he's a performer and an actor in the show, but not only the creator of the show. Do you see this as a path for the future, something that other people like yourselves would want to do, or the producers are interested in doing? I'm also interested in how he actually makes it happen, if you guys know. Are the actors paid? I don't know if I'm allowed to have it, is he just like, hey, Ben Platt, come join me, tomorrow, and they're doing a favor for him by performing, listen, everyone's part of one community, and it appears that when I watch these things, I've never seen Ham for Ham in person, everyone's just so joyous, they're so excited to be there, right, and promote their show and their story. But I guess, A, how does it happen? And B, do you see this as something other people would like to imitate?
Yes. One, Lin-Manuel Miranda is a marketing genius. A lot of this is his idea. The Ham for Hams, he literally was calling and texting people to get them to come. As far as I know, the actors are not paid specifically to do that, but it's sort of considered as part of their job of promoting the show. You're getting paid to perform every night, but you're a spokesperson for the show. You're doing press, you're doing interviews.
And we are paid for that too.
Yes.
It's like a media fee that's in your contract.
It's just like automatically in your fee. Like it's part of what you're a writer. I think so.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
But a lot of Ham for Ham was just Lin pulling together his friends to do something fun. And I think that what is so great about that specifically is that it's fun, it's interesting, it's new. When he started doing Ham for Hams, no one was doing stuff like that. So really, it's similar to now content creators. Like it was that was the early stage of like doing cool, interesting things, and yeah.
I want to talk about the pro shot of it all for 2 seconds. I just wish that live streaming would be a thing at the theater, and I know that that is insane to talk about because of unions and certain shows couldn't allow it and whatever, but clearly pro shots are not making people want to attend Broadway any less. If anything, they are bringing the brand of Broadway to more and more people. And I don't just need a pro shot. Like, I would be very content with a camera at the back of the house, not fancy, every single night, and I would pay a fee to sit on my couch and watch a Broadway show, and people in Oklahoma could do it, and people across the pond could do it, and people anywhere could do it for a smaller rate and bring that accessibility to more people. I just don't understand why that is not. I understand that there are unions, I understand that Broadway is slow to these things, but that's such a literally limitless revenue stream and brand building opportunity, and some producer needs to be brilliant and give me a DM or a call and like, let's make it happen, because it's driving me crazy. There's so much money to be made, there's so much accessibility to offer, and I just don't know why we aren't aggressively pursuing that when theaters are shutting down, when Broadway shows are closing early. Like, there is an audience, we're just not able to reach them. So
even like once a month.
It doesn't need to be every single night, like once a month, once a quarter, I don't know. Anyway, okay, we're 1 minute away, so I'm gonna panel rapid fire us. Also, feel free to like follow us, DM us. If you have questions, like reach out to us, because these are really, I think, important conversations to have. So quick, rapid fire down the panel. What do we hope for the future of the Brand of Broadway and content creation moving forward?
The other way.
Yeah, go for it.
I hope that we're able to work together more, honestly, and I think we're getting there. But I think that all the different pieces of a Broadway show working together to promote a show on social media, on what we're all using every day. That's what I hope.
Yeah. I hope for like fair compensation across the board. And I also hope, like, I'm gonna say this is the fastest story, but like someone recently like told me about how they saw like a group of like 12-year-old boys, and they were like walking past the Back to the Future signage, and they were like, oh my god, like Back to the Future is a musical, like I need to see that. And I'm like, how can we reach more like of the youth specifically, but also like the, you know, male identifying demographic too that doesn't see theater a lot. So I feel like there's like a way to tap into it that I'm excited to, hopefully we can at some point.
So rethread, and also follow me on Threads, by the way. I would really like to see producers become more knowledgeable about social media, because I think one of the reasons why there is a hesitancy to put money to this is because they don't intimately understand it. So I'm available for consultation.
Great. They've said it. I've talked enough. Follow me on socials, DM me. Thank you all. You're amazing. Good luck.
Rethread.
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 Thank you all